Big grin.
And into the space. Okay. So I'll say welcome to everyone or anyone or whoever chooses to watch this. And yeah, let's dive into it. So, well, okay, actually, no, I want to ask, where are you? Because I think that's always a good question to get the energy.
Are you in gallery view right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Where am I? In Norfolk. In Norfolk, UK. East of England.
And somewhere special in Norfolk?
Somewhere special? Well, it's special because I'm here, but yeah. Well, I don't, that's good enough, isn't it?
Yeah, I just want people to feel the energy of where you're coming from, where I'm coming from. I think that's
okay. I'll say I'm in the woods in Norfolk.
That's
I think that, yeah, that's the feeling.
Yeah. And the wall in the background that you made.
Exactly. You can see some of the trees are in the wall.
I love that. And I'm in Glastonbury. It feels like a closed place in a similar way that the woods feels, but completely differently. It's like an intimate space where you have to meet yourself, which is the same as the woods. So there's an intimacy already that I feel you get when you share where you're coming from. And
you're in the west,
yeah,
and I'm in the east.
Yeah, we're meeting in the middle. And now the question is the middle stuff, which is, what do you think about the current COVID situation? Some people are calling it COVID the other day, and I was like, what?
Yeah, maybe that's the correct pronunciation, because I heard somebody say COVID who's a sort of public school journalist, and I thought, oh, maybe they're, because it's, if it had an E, it might be COVID, but it's just COV. So I don't know. We call it COVID. Everyone's calling it COVID, apart from the educated. So yeah.
COVID-19 as well.
COVID-19.
It sort of sounds like an operation, doesn't it? When 19 on the end of it.
Oh, look out. Conspiracy.
Exactly. It actually does itself justice, I think, saying the whole thing, because if you just say COVID, it's sort of like a name that can be, I don't know, slightly more endearing. When you say COVID-19, you probably have to say an American accent as well for it to be really dropped with the energy that I think surrounds it. So, okay, what do you think about the current COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, gosh, interesting. The most interesting thing that's happened in my lifetime, I think. But not because of the virus, which is the least of it. I think it's more COVID-19 is a collective global mental health issue. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a kind of a whole freak out going on. Yeah, so interesting. There are so many layers to it, and it's like a kind of perfect storm. We were heading into it, or into something, and this came along. It was like when I say we, I'm really talking about the West and Britain in particular, which is where I am. That's my perspective. But I'm, very influenced by America because, the media, internet, we're all very kind of influenced, certainly in England. But I kind of see it's it shows our terror of death and our complete inability in this culture to deal with death in a good way. So our fear of death means that we would rather stop everything and almost die like a living death instead of the chance that we might die, which in this instance seems a really, really small chance that we might die. And what we're actually doing in response to this, which is so clouded now by politics and social media. I think politics and social media have amplified this virus into this massive thing that has very little to do with the reality of what's going on. And we're reacting to this story now that we've created rather than reacting to the thing. And react is really the word, because we're not responding to a virus. We're reacting to this story we've concocted, which is mixed in with this real blind spot when it comes to death. But also, I feel it's mixed in with an expectation that something terrible was coming. And there's almost a kind of relief. I felt this early on. That was like, we've been fed now for years and years so many stories of how fucked up everything is. The environment's fucked up, global warming's going on, technology is kind of consolidating control, capitalism is devouring itself and everything that it can get its teeth into. And all of this has kind of come together to condition us all to think, the apocalypse is coming. So when the circumstances were just right, so that when this virus appeared, it was like, oh my God, this is it at last, almost like a relief, like, let's embrace it fully. Let's really like ramp it up and go to town with this thing, because it's better to have something to project your fear onto than this nebulous, mysterious threat that was building, in our kind of collective awareness. We were thinking, oh my God, the world's going to shit. Something's going to kill us all. It's only a matter of time. So it was almost like this relief, like, oh great, we found the devil that we can kind of put everything onto, like project all our fears and our hatred and our frustration and our impotence, and that mixed in with that fear of death, or that inability to deal with death, mixed in with the hype that social media creates and the kind of reinforcing hype of social media, and then the kind of political shenanigans where they're trying to make use of anything like this to kind of stay in power or gain more power or control even more. And our culture really likes to control things, has become increasingly, as it's dying, which seems evident to me that we are seeing our culture at the end of its life. It's grasping so tightly on to control, to try and hold on, even though everything is slipping through its fingers. It's just trying to hold on. And that, all of these things that I'm talking about have all been put into this virus. It's even been drawn into that whole culture war between left and right, and each side has a very different response to what it is and how to deal with it. And then there's the whole conspiracy thing that's been pulled into it as well, and it's incredible. And so really, if I step back and look at it, I just see collective mental illness is what's going on. And underneath it, there is a virus which is killing some people, mostly those, if not all, in some way, who have a compromised immune system, who are not healthy, and this is the whole other thing. I think there's a complete misunderstanding generally as to what viruses are. We've got a very skewed view of bacteria, viruses. There's a real kind of general sense of these things are out to get us and kill us, and like for them to live they need to kill us. And it's a complete misunderstanding as I read it, because it seems to me that viruses, bacteria, these are all an integral part of the web of life. They are actually older than all the plants and animals. These are the earliest life forms on which, these are like the foundations on which everything else is built. And the communication and interaction and energy exchange and manufacturing of proteins and all of that that's going on between viruses and bacteria and fungi and all of those kind of microbiotic, no, not microbiotic, what am I saying? Microscopic organisms that make up our bodies. You know, we're full of these things and these communities. They're so completely woven into who we are that this idea that there's somehow these separate things trying to kill us is, to me, seems completely misguided.
It's just duality in every way, isn't it? It's a lesson in learning who we are again. It's like this waking up of, we've been driven mad, like you said, mentally ill by our own minds. And we've got to this point where it's, you know, it's do or die in that way of, we've got to get past this way of being obsessed with control, obsessed with success and man-made just constructs in general. And it's really interesting to see how far out we have become as a culture. And it's this thing that's kind of shaking us up and waking us up and saying, remember, you're not just a fucking brain. You have all of these things, and you talking in depth about that and how we're connected on a bacterial level is so important. It's like we're being brought back to earth, literally, like come back to earth, connect in with what's around you, start listening again, start opening up, start, community wise as well. It's like, that we were talking about the way mushrooms communicate. It's like we have to start doing that now, instead of kind of just focusing from this place here and just going, like we've got to come back into the body, and we've got to understand what's around us and how we can communicate and support one another to kind of grow this new experience. Because it is important that this wisdom that's part of us comes in and shows us where we're fucking up, because we're all part of the grander scheme. We're all part of we're all part of Gaia, we're all part of the universe, we're all part of everything. We've just forgotten that. It's like we've gone down this narrow tunnel, got to the end of where we can go with this way of being, and everything is saying, wake up, consciousness is rising. We've got the support of this virus. That's how I see it. It's like a global kind of awakening of, it's time to shift, it's time to change the way we've been doing things. And the earth is actually telling us that by bringing about this bacteria, this virus, to say, look, you've got to stop fucking up. And those of you who choose or have chosen not to, it's your time. It's like, there's so much interwoven, because there's the spiritual aspect of it, there's the soul aspect of, whether your time is literally up. Like, we're all here for a reason, and there's so much that we could talk about on the mind, body, spirit level. But it does feel like this is a point where we have to choose, and we have a choice, and to remember that we have a choice, that each of us have a choice, and the system has got us this far, and now it's our choice. Because like everything, we're evolving, so there was a reason for this whole history that we've been through. We've been raising our consciousness generation after generation. If you think about our, you know, grandparents and how, where they were and now where we are. So it's all part of the process. But it's now at a point where we can actually see it on a greater scheme, like on a greater scale, that we're all kind of at this point together as well, not just the people who are, you know, not just the hippies, not just the people who are pushing out for another way of being. It's like everyone is kind of being asked at the door, like, what do you want to do? What's your choice?
Mm.
And going into the supermarket and seeing people with masks on and seeing people so far away. It's like, you know, that how I see it is that image of the what is it? What is that figure called when you meet death? What's he called?
What, the Grim Reaper?
That's what I see people with the masks on about. It's like, are they going to choose to go with him? Because they all look like they're choosing that.
Mm.
Or are they going to choose to, you know, liberate themselves? And it's just really obvious now, and it's kind of amazing. Like, everything is not under the surface, it's actually showing itself what people are choosing. Are they choosing fear and manipulation and control and oppression and disconnection, or are they choosing to step into that other place? It's just mad, but it's good because we need to have something that's equally as mad as how we've been living to meet that madness, so that it shakes people up out
Well,
of their own
it's
self.
like a fever. So if you think of the way we've been living, and this touches back in with this understanding of what illness and viruses are. So if you get a flu, say, again, we have this understanding, widely accepted understanding, that you get the flu, oh, it's this virus that came and got you, and now you're ill. No, you get a flu because your body is out of balance, because you're unfit, you're unhealthy, your diet's poor, or maybe your mind is in a bad way, your heart is in a bad way, maybe the way you've been living no longer works or serves you, and you need to update. And because you won't update yourself, you won't break through and kill off that old person that no longer fits you. What the body does is it utilizes this virus to fuck up your head, basically sends your head off into a trip so it can't like stop what's going on. It gets your body laid out on the bed so you can't go and do anything, you can't physically do anything, and then it just heats you up and cooks you, you know, and basically kills the old person so the new person can come in. And it really gives you that excuse. If you're driven, you have to stop. So if you need an excuse, it gives you an excuse to stop, reflect, have a look at your life, where you're at. So it can do all of these things. It could be you got the flu because you needed to change the way you've been living. You're not aligned with your kind of soul purpose. Or maybe you were just living a really unhealthy life, like you were working too many hours, not resting enough, your diet was poor, you weren't getting exercise, you were stressed, whatever it was that weakened your wellness. And it's the same thing that's happening in our culture. Our culture is so sick, our way of life is so toxic now, ourselves and everything else we're connected to, that to me it's like it's invited in this virus, which has then invited in this mental virus, so that we can basically go into this fever, and everything, all those systems that weren't working, just kind of freak out. And you know, and that's what we're seeing. So it's a great opportunity in that sense, but that's kind of taking it a bit further. Just before we disappear into that or go beyond that, I want to get back to something else about the virus, which I think is one, to me, the analogy is a bit like it's a software update. So all of life is connected. And when the conditions on Earth change, which they always do, because it's a constantly evolving, changing process, the virus is almost like communication network where, you know, when conditions change, our bodies need to genetically alter. The plants and animals need to alter their form to adapt to the new conditions. And it happens in real time. You know, this is a thing that's going on between all species all the time, is this constant communication and update of information and energy saying, okay, now this is happening, you need to alter, you need to alter, you need to alter. Because the whole thing is a self-regulating life form, you know, the whole, that's the sort of Gaia idea, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think what this virus shows to me, apart from all that cultural stuff that I just talked about, is that we have polluted the food chain, we're ransacking the environment, we've caused so much disturbance in the life system, in the web of life, that it's gonna start now freaking out, trying to adapt quickly, because it's always trying to adapt to what's going on. And let's remember, we're also, it's not humans are killing the earth, because we are part of the earth. It's the earth doing it to itself. So it's like a natural cycle in that sense, in that, you know, maybe this is just how, you know, like a flower flowers, and then what makes the flower die? There's something in the information within the cells that say, okay, we flowered now it's time to die. And maybe species are just like that. They rise up, they flower, they die. Maybe cultures are like that. They rise up, they flower, they die. And maybe this is all just how, on a big scale, that flowering comes to an end, is that these kind of signals get sent out. But I really want to just, to kind of bring it back to the human level, I just want to point out our food system is so polluted. We've put so much chemical shit into the soil, and the soil is like the substrate for all of life. We've fucked with the soil and the microorganisms in the soil so much that the whole system is freaking out. You know, we are, and if you combine that with the kind of land use and how we've taken over the land and we're destroying habitat, and that all the bigger species are getting extinct and even the smaller ones, all of those things together are creating such turmoil, you know, that the whole system's freaking out. And then you've got the climate is also going on that whole journey as well. It's so complex, this thing, you know, you can't separate.
No, because it's all, but you could go down all the different channels. But also, I think it's important, you know so much about this stuff because you are living in the center of it.
Well, I know as much as anyone, you know, all these, but it's important to remember that nobody knows anything. We are so ignorant. We are so ignorant, you know, we're guessing. We don't even know who we are. We don't even know how our brains, bodies, minds, souls, we don't understand any of that. It's all speculation.
We're learning now. But it's important to say that you know, you've been working closely with the land, and that makes a difference. You know, a lot of people aren't even connected to the land. So when you start to tune into the land, which is what, you know, we used to do as tribes, we understand that we're part of it. But because we've become so far away and disconnected from our environment and our land and growing our own food and, you know, being connected to that chain of how we actually, you know, get what we need, I feel like that is so important, is to come back to that and to educate, you know, ourselves again. So that we can start healing that, because it's just like, you know, anything, we've kind of gone out and it's now like, okay, it's time to come back in, it's time to come back into the beginning again, because we've evolved, and it's time now to see, right, how can we now, you know, be part of the solution instead of getting lost in the there's nothing and we're all destined to, die, because we also do have, I mean, we are, but we also do have a choice. And that's really important to remember. And I feel like that's something to really kind of remind people about, because when you get off that place, you don't even think that you have a choice, because you're dealing with this, someone tells you to do something, someone tells you to pay your rent, someone tells you to pay your council tax, someone tells you to do this and turn up here and fill in this form and that form and we'll take care of it. And I really feel like this is a call to remembering have a choice, to remembering that actually we do have power, and the power in making a collective choice and coming back to community living, which I think is something really important to talk about, because that's something that you've done a lot of, and that's something we've done together. That's something that's kind of, I think, really being called for again, coming back to that tribal way of living and connecting back in with the earth and connecting back in with each other, kind of actually seeing each other, which is also the work that we've been doing together, like actually seeing each other and meeting, who we are, and actually being curious about that and being curious about how we can actually support one another to be who we truly are, away from all of this madness that we've kind of escaped into. It's like, let's come back down to earth, let's come back down to what's actually here, let's come back down to what is actually going on with one another, and how can we like really help that again, because that's the foundation, isn't it? It's community and the way that we live and the way that we support each other.
Yeah, I think that reintegration,
Yeah.
because something's happened where we've massively expanded into our heads, which was an evolutionary move, and it's led to this birth of a new life form, which is basically machine intelligence, which may well be what goes on from here. And all these things are completely natural because they all came out of the earth. But if humanity is going to survive in some form in the near future, even because we're at a critical time now, there has to be a reintegration. There has to be not a rejection of all this advancement into the prefrontal lobes and the neocortex and all of that, but to kind of reintegrate it with the heart and the gut and spirit, and just to harmonize it. I feel like there was this big push, and it was really expensive in a lot of ways for a lot of people and the environment. But now we've got to kind of settle the bill and bring it all back into balance. So, and what that means to me personally, and what my discovery has been living closely with the land, is first of all to come back into my own body, which is the foundation of my individual particular being. But there's also this greater body, which I didn't realize until I came to live here, which is the land. The land is our greater body. It's actually what we grow out of, what we live from, what we're in communication with all the time. And it's easy to forget that in a city when you're in an office wearing plastic shoes and you're looking at a screen. You're so disconnected from the earth, but you're still on the earth. It's all around you, the air, the birds, the sunlight, the seasons, the weather. It's all around you. And it's that there's such a source of nourishment and beauty and abundance of anything you would ever need in the land, in the soil, in the plants and the animals, in the interactions of all these life forms, the bacteria, the viruses, the fungi. It's all so rich and supportive. And so we somehow need to kind of bring those two things, this kind of technological monkey brain, we need to bring that back into harmony with its foundation, and also then go out or back into the heart,
Mm.
and connect emotionally with everyone and everything.
Mm.
And then you can talk about spirit beyond all of that. But I think you can't really access those higher domains unless all of this stuff is in harmony.
I think
this
in
kind of lower
heart
level
is open. I really feel that that's what heart consciousness is about. It's about coming back into this space, like you said, understanding your emotions and letting your energy flow, and not from that place of control and contract and like, no, I know with my mind, I know with my ego. It's about fully coming back into that heart space, and then recognizing the soul, recognizing the spiritual side, which there's just been so much with religion that has, I mean, that was a whole nother subject, you know.
it's a whole big yeah, maybe not this time. Yeah.
Controlled and manipulated, you know. So we have been separated from our spirit, from our soul, from that greater source connection and that energy that flows. And so there's so much that is being reclaimed. It's like it's our time to reclaim just our ability to choose and to explore ourselves and to explore our bodies and to explore, you know, our creativity and our gifts and what we came here to share. And as you said, coming back into the body, that has been my biggest teacher, is my body. Coming after having wanted to get out of my body all of my life until the past, you know, 5 or 6 years, I was like, you know, no, I don't want to be here. No, why am I even here? This is ridiculous. Because of being such a sensitive person from a young age, and knowing, you know, in my deep inner knowing was this is all fucked up. And then kind of trying to deal with that as a sensitive, creative person, and someone who had a big vision for what I could see would be possible if we could all do it together. And coming back to the body and exploring that, and exploring sensuality and sexuality and just how to be empowered in your body. I do feel like that is the groundwork, as you said, because our bodies and the earth, it's that physical experience that kind of just needs to be explored and appreciated and celebrated for, you know, the fact that we're here as well. Because I feel like we've gone so far away from that, even that sense of gratitude for being alive. And you know, there are all of these things that when we start practicing them and we start getting into our bodies, there's so much that we access from that place, because these bodies are, you know, like highly efficient technology and not just like pieces of meat. They're like, you know, here to support us and to hold, to be the kind of temple of the mind and the heart and the soul and everything. So it's reclaiming the body. And there's so much that comes from just doing that. There's so much that I've learned that's like rippled out, and I'm like, oh, that and that and that, and it's just wide open coming back to the body. I do think that is the place to start. You know, start with diet. That's where I went. Start with, you know, how you're
Well,
actually
I would say go lower. Start with the ground. Through your body, feel the ground, and through your senses, notice where you live. It's the disconnection with place that's led us to cause so much damage and harm, or we do it because it's our actions are having an effect on the other side of the world and we're not there, so we don't see it going on. We don't see what buying something does to Africa or, you know, South America or wherever it is. So having a relationship, a real intimacy with the land where you live, even if you're in the city, there are trees, there are green spaces, there are rivers. You know, think about all those massive rivers that flow through most of the big cities on earth, if not all of them. They are massively kind of powerful ways of connecting with the landscape, with the land. And if you start with that, and the only way to do that is through your body, so you're already connecting with your body to do that. to me, that is the foundation for everything. And it seems like what we're being called to do now, because I feel like this is, as well as the death of this old, totally destructive way of life, this is the birth of this age now of healing, because there's so much healing to be done after the trauma of what we've been through, that before we can kind of fully blossom into some kind of higher level of human existence, we've got to, or part of the same process maybe, is this looking after everybody, taking care of everyone, healing, you know, giving the land the space to recover, because it doesn't need us to recover. It just needs to be allowed to be what it is. You know, there's many ways we can do that. But I sort of, my kind of picture of this is, in an individual, is like the tree. You know, you're the tree, you're the trunk, your body is the trunk. You need to reach down through your roots into the soil, into the earth, one way, as this, at the same time you're reaching up, you're branching out. And this is like your heart, it's connecting with everyone around you, with all the other life. And then it's going right up into the heavens, you know, and that's the sort of spiritual. So it's this kind of heaven and earth, like the yoga pose, where you have to ground into your feet at the same time as stretching upwards. And it's that, at the same time, up and down connection, where there's this line straight through the center, and everything's aligned and everything's connected. Feels like that. That's what we've been kind of pulled towards now.
Yeah, I always say it's the central column. It's
like column
is
a good word.
It's the pillar of energy, your life force pillar.
Breath.
Connect.
Column of breath. Think about that. That was in that. Do you remember the that amazing Bob Dylan documentary, the first one that Scorsese did? No Direction Home, where Allen Ginsberg is talking about Bob Dylan, and he gets so emotional, and he says he's like this column of breath, that because his kind of execution and delivery of the songs was so amazingly crafted, and it was like he was completely in the center of the breath. Just this kind of life force in and out. It's that's the feeling, I think.
No constriction, just this fluidity,
open.
Allowing that to be the guide as well for everything. And when you start to connect in with that, and yes, the breath is the way back, because also if I feel into when I was so disconnected and I was kind of always trying to get out, I wasn't anchored, and the breath anchors you into your body. I wasn't breathing properly. It was amazing when I first started to, like, it took me a year, or I would say a couple of years, to actually get used to breathing properly, after years of breathing just up here, you know, and that, which I would say most of us are doing, because that's the fight or flight.
Think about that, what that is, that connection with the outside, you know, in every breath, all of this life force comes in, you know, like a tide, in and out, washes you, energizes you.
But when you're just doing it from there, you're not fully inhabiting the fullness of that, and taking care of yourself with the energy that wants to go all the way down. And
it's probably not even from the head up now that we've gone so far into our heads that we've actually come out of them into our mobile phones. Breathing's probably only happening like in the tiniest, like, I don't know, through your eyeballs or something. Not even that. Maybe in the space between your head and the phone is where you're breathing, which is such a small amount of your lungs.
Just your ear into the phone.
Maybe it's just through your ears.
But so, that's the core, the key thing is to come back to the breath.
Well, here, this kind of brings it back to the beginning, where we're talking about the virus and what's going on. Everyone must have noticed, out of all the kind of authorities and governments and World Health Organizations and all of those people who everyone's been looking to kind of help us in this situation, when have you heard anything that talked about, your well-being, your wellness? Where was the advice from day one to look at your diet? Maybe you're going to get ill because you're eating shit food and it's full of chemicals. Maybe you're going to get ill because you're not exercising. Maybe you're going to get ill because you're not relating well, or you're not part of a community. You're not feeling loved or secure, or maybe you're too stressed. You know, so these things, you know, where's the advice that's saying, right, okay, this virus is coming, here's what we want to do. We want to make sure everyone's exercising really well. Okay, nobody can go to work, so let's pay everyone the full amount of their wage, so that none of that financial worry is there, and just take a month off, enjoy your families, you know, connect, go out. You know, they said don't go out so much. They stop people walking in the hills and the mountains. That's exactly where you should be, out in the air, fresh air, sunlight. All these things are good for you. You know, where that shows you how ill the culture is, because the culture doesn't want you to be well. The culture wants you to be sick, so you'll buy some drugs so that the companies can make money, blah, blah, blah. We all know it. And yet we forget that. And now everyone's excited. There's a vaccine. Never mind a fucking vaccine. What about stopping polluting the soil? What about like stopping cutting down the rainforest? What about taking care of everyone so their mental health is good? What about not working, you know, 16 hours a day just to live? What about not fucking over most of the third world so that you can have a Gucci handbag? Do you know what I mean? It's all in there.
I mean,
it's about bring the focus back to wellness, not to illness, you know? Okay, that little rant over.
No, but dis-ease. What is disease? Is dis-ease.
Yeah, these are not things that live independently of people trying to kill us. These are indicators that we are out of balance. Every disease is just something, the world saying, you know what, you're not living right. Readjust. It's totally the case. Or you're collectively not living right, or you're disturbing the environment so much that something is sort of bouncing back, like a natural equalizer has come to put down the humans that are destroying the environment. You know, it may be that that's what's going to happen because the carrying capacity of the earth has been overwhelmed by the way we're living. So maybe the earth, because the earth is always trying to be in balance, it's just going to kill off, you know, maybe it's got to a point where this particular era of life forms just all need to die out, and it'll settle down and it'll start again like it has done throughout history.
Oh yeah, I mean, really, we could just be like, okay, nice knowing you, everyone.
But, you know, and that's okay. You know, that's okay too, because life continues in the greater sense, and the energy doesn't disappear. It just changes shape and form. So on one level, you know, that's all right. And on, you know, and all of us only ever have one death, whatever's going on, and we're all going to die. You know, no amount of lockdown, no amount of anything you could buy, or however much you want to take care of yourself will stop you from eventually dying. We're all going to die. So, you know, the worst that can happen is you'll die, and that's going to happen anyway. So it's already there. So
I know,
maybe we can relax.
We always easily say that, but there's so much emotion around that, isn't there? And we're always looking at the greater perspective, which kind of is, you know, a safe place to be, isn't it? When you're constantly saying, well, this is what is going to happen. And it's interesting because coming back to that, not accepting death is, you know, the wisdom of what death is, you know, the wisdom of coming back to life and death and the story, the ancient teachings of the tribes and the ancestors. And there's so much about that that's coming forward. And I feel in the work that I'm doing, especially, is the ancestors so close to us as well. When you kind of start to tap into the energy and the frequency and the information that has been you know, that is here for us, that's in our DNA, our ancestors. We are, you know, inheriting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can't say enough syllables there. Anyway, inheriting
Sounded all
their
right.
their you know, why is my brain gone there right now? It's we are part of them. They are part of us. We
It's a
are
continuum, right? There's
exactly.
no us and them. It's a continuum. We are just the latest version of all those
Yeah.
layers of biological
Mm-hmm.
information, emotional information,
Mm-hmm.
intellectual, spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
It's a continuum. We just, you know, that's it. You just, as we know, you know, maybe some of us are lucky enough to have little glimpses of it. We are all just one thing anyway. This
Mm-hmm.
connection, this separateness is illusory. And in those great moments in life where, for whatever reason, you break through this,
Yeah.
you can really feel that. And it's just such a deep, you know, and that's how I feel about the earth. It's like such a deep relief to know that you're not separate,
Yeah.
that you're actually just part of this massive thing, and it's okay, you know. And there is this separate ego, this separate small self, which is great too, because you get to hold that paradox. You get to be both one and this individual, you know, the big one and the individual at the same time. I mean, that dance, that's what makes life really beautiful, is that, you know, one, you're going to die, so it's passing all the time, which makes it so much sweeter. And also that you're separate, but you're not separate. You know, they're all there at the same time. I really feel that death, more and more, life is just this preparation for death, which is a beginning of a different journey.
Just it's the same thing though. That's what I was trying. That's what I was
Yeah,
getting
yin
at.
and yang, they're just complementary and essential complements. And that a healthy relationship to death means that you get to be a whole person. I think I'd like to see that rising again, because you know that other cultures have had that in the past.
Well, that's the
This
wisdom
healthy relationship with death.
yeah, is that our ancestors and those before us knew that deeply, and it was respected, you know. There was a real appreciation for that, and celebrated. And that's why I always love the Mexican Day of the Dead, you know,
Yeah,
celebrating the death, celebrating that there's, you know, they've gone off the new cycle, you know, that it's always continuing, that there's not like this sudden stopping to life. It's like you come from the same, you were birthed from the womb, you'll go back to the womb. And it's just like this really beautiful way of just like connecting everything together. And those ancient teachings are really important to remember, and kind of, again, it's this reclaiming, this reawakening, this remembering. It's all been done. It's about just accessing it again. And that will support us where we're next going, where humanity is next going, whatever that looks like. It's really coming back to, you know, that we're not alone. We've got one another. We're in this together, and we've got a lot of wisdom and tools within us, and we don't need other people or other, you know, kind of collective energies telling us what to do anymore. And I feel like that's we've come to this point of, what do we need to do to step into the life that we want to live, because it's time to awaken to the fact that we have been controlled as well. And it's like we're on this edge of just going, and how that looks is going to be really interesting. But speaking for my, like, how I want to kind of go forward is that trusting, is that connection with there being this new space to step into, and how can I show up to that? How can I show up to this new kind of path that's slowly presenting itself, and how can I take a step forward every day to make sure I'm meeting, you know, my desires and who I am, and fulfilling myself, and connecting with others and sharing the things that I'm receiving, and being of service, basically. That's what I feel for me. And I feel like, you know, for everyone, is to get back into that place of, I'm sovereign and I have something to offer here. And, you know, then kind of working with that, and that's the place to go from now, healthily, as connected to self, and what can I bring to this new space. And then it, like everything, we never see the bigger picture. It's just following the next step, the breadcrumbs, and just showing up to it and being like, okay, what's there? What do we do now? Like when you're creating anything.
There's two sides. I mean, what you're saying there is completely right, as far as I see as well, that this personal sovereignty is where you start. You get your own house in order. You honor your soul's purpose on earth, which is to make a gift of your life in service to the world, to enrich the world through your life. And whatever it is you're doing, if you take that on one side, and then you can have a collective intelligence that deals with bigger problems or situations, but it doesn't have to be something institutionalized. It can be a collective intelligence that just spontaneously forms out of all these sovereign individuals, and the right people get pulled forward depending on the situation, because they know to step forward because, oh, I know something about this, I can help. And then you imagine that, where a collective intelligence comes together, deals with the problem super efficiently in the best possible way, and then just dissolves again when it's finished. It doesn't stay in power, because when you stay in power, you get corrupt. It doesn't become an institution which is like a dinosaur dragging its feet along, you know, making mistakes, crushing individuals and people and groups. It becomes this incredibly fluid, super intelligent, networked, spontaneous management system which could span the entire world. You wouldn't need states or governments anymore, or mass organized religions, or any of those things which actually create all the problems, as far as I can see. Or not all, but a big part of the problem is when you have groups of people organized in that way, only then can you have war. Only then can you have, you know, these kind of massive tyrannies, and, you know, all the suffering that goes on because of control, which is basically the fear of death, or the fear of living, or the fear of freedom, of allowing people to be sovereign individuals. You know, imagine the richness of the earth if everywhere you went you met fully realized people who were supported by a loving community with all the resources to become fully who they are. And imagine the gifts they'd be giving back to the world. It would be so incredible. Every village would have a Beethoven or a Billie Holiday or a Gandhi, or, you know, or whatever. You'd have this just that's what I want. That's what I've always been looking for in the world. And the frustration is, why not? You know, we're ready for it now. We can do it. We've got all the technology. We could take care of all the existential problems. We could feed, house, you know, clothe everybody. We can look after the environment. We're so clever. We could take care of all the problems. They're just problems, and collectively we can solve them really quickly now that we're connected, you know, and through the network. So it's just like, give up the fear.
We've said this in our relationship and knowing one another. It's like literally every day we would be like, and then we can be this together. We'll be so off. And then it's like, woo.
But I think it's good to remember that, especially now when it all seems so doom and gloomy. Is, you know, now is the time to share those visions. You know, I used to be, I was an idealist when I was younger, like really like an extreme radical idealist, and it's a horrible way to live. It's a painful existence. And, you know, and then I thought, well, I'm a recovering idealist now, because I accept that the world is already perfect and I've got to get over that. But that doesn't mean, if I feel this and I see this vision of how beautiful it could be, I shouldn't be sharing it, because of course we should. Because I'd rather have that picture I just described than lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
mass unemployment, environmental collapse, potential war between China and America, Russia, you know, endless wars in the Middle East, viruses everywhere, unhealthy lifestyles, people like stuck plugged into social media addictions that are like draining them, sapping their souls. You know, that doesn't sound like fun. And that's what we're doing. What about?
But that's holding the vision. That's what I'm always talking about. The visionaries of each generation. These are the people who hold the vision. It's a very challenging job to hold the vision when you see everything else going around that's not aligning with the vision. But that is how energy works. You have to energetically vibrate at a frequency that you're holding continuously for everything else to then meet it. Energy comes before physical matter. And I see that as, you know, our relationship being very much about holding a vision and together, you know, linking up with those people who also share the vision that you can support one another with. Because that's something that I used to find really challenging, which I'm sure you did, is not having the people who were understanding of the vision or able to see the vision and calling you crazy and just generally not being able to.
But also we need to integrate it. We need to be able to function. And this is something that has challenged both of us. I know this. We also need to live and learn how to live with the world how it is now. We need to make a living. And, you know, so there's this integration that needs to happen. There's, and you know, and everyone's got a different thing to bring. Some people have the vision, but they're useless at doing something else. You know, some people are really good at technical problems. Like they have these incredible engineering brains. Some people are really good at caring, like just caring. Think about the kind of lack of love that so many people, and the loneliness in this lockdown that so many people are feeling. You know, if you can just love people, like if you've got a big old heart that can give out the love, what a gift that is to the world. You know, just being kind to somebody in the supermarket, you know, just that little thing can be massive to somebody who's isolated. And remembering you're a human being, you know, and you know, if you're cheeky enough, take the mask off and smile at somebody for a second, you know, if you don't think it's going to freak them out. And you know, some people are genuinely at risk of this virus, and we shouldn't, you know, play that down. And those people need to be protected, but not at the expense of everyone else and life going.
Well, I haven't been wearing one at all, so it's been definitely freaking people out. But that's my truth as well, and I think it's important to also, you know, be aware and be thoughtful and notice, or this is for me anyway, I've thought, notice people, you know, there is a vulnerability there, but also not doing it to be controlled if it doesn't align with how you feel. And everyone's feeling different, and again, that's really important to honor, is that everyone has different opinions, and this is also something that is being kind of asked for as well, is this collective conversation. Like, let's remember what conversation is. Control, it's not a one way, it's not I think this and you have to believe. This is something that we've done a lot together, is just talk, and I've realized how powerful it is when you can have someone who's hearing you and showing up and just being in the space and being able to allow the energy to flow, so it's not just one way. And I feel like coming back to communication and understanding what that even is, you know, when two people show up and they want to share how they feel about something and what you can create in that space, is really important. It's like, let's have real conversations where we can actually all grow together. There's just been one communication that has just been kind of, you know, dominating us. It's like this way, and no, you don't have, you know, we don't want to hear what you have to say. And we've been taught to communicate in that way as well, by our culture and by our society. So it's also reclaiming the way that we communicate with one another.
Well, the social media algorithms are basically polarizing everyone, because only extreme, provocative, stimulating things get sorted for, not only, but you're always being led towards the things that will have the strongest reaction, so that you keep showing up. You know, it's had such a profound effect on our entire culture, and kids who are growing up in that, God knows what it's doing to them. But the technology's got so far ahead of us that we only now are starting to realize, oh my God, we've like got into something which is super harmful, because we're innocent. We didn't know what it was or how to use it. And, you know, it's got that whole profit chasing kind of angle behind it that's pushing it. You know, profit to me is like this incredible new life form that appeared through capitalism over thousands of years, and has become one of the most powerful energy forces, and it's devouring the earth and humanity, and it's fascinating. And I wonder if it's almost like it's the energy that this machine intelligence needs to kind of birth itself into the stars or something like that. You know, you could go all sci-fi on it.
Yeah.
You know, that's my way of making peace with profit, which just seems like a totally anti-human, anti-life force in the way it corrupts and devours.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just a bigger life form being born. I don't know. But anyway, maybe I feel like there's so many things we could talk about, but perhaps we should I feel like it'd be really nice to do it in stages. Yeah.
I always like to try and fit everything in one.
Yeah, I know, me
tend
too.
to do that well. That we do touch on everything, even when we just have a light conversation. There's always all of the things coming in.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about it's good sometimes, isn't it, to pick a subject like you did with a question, or to have a question, because if the question's big enough, which many questions are, you can touch on all of life anyway. Or maybe every question contains all of life in potential. Anyway.
Ending with that beautiful piece of information, thought-provoking sentence. It is amazing. I mean, I'm exhausted now.
Yeah, let's go and have a lie down.
Oh, we've been everywhere.
Well, I hope I wasn't too verbose and rambly, but
no,
you did ask me.
It's fascinating. It's really interesting to hear different points of views and different, all sorts of perspectives, because that is the communication we're going to have if we're going to make a change.
Well, you've just brought something up for me by saying that, which is a realization, which is, I think we only ever really learn anything new in conversation, either about ourselves or about somebody else or the bigger picture. And it's only by listening, when you're not expressing yourself is important, as long as you're still connected. You know, try and remember. That's what I'm always trying to do. Remember to stay connected and not just be broadcasting, which has a certain feeling and becomes a bit boring. But that listening, that really being able to hear somebody else, even if what they're saying doesn't make any sense to you or it feels strongly wrong, but just being able to receive it and let it land on you. It's healing, it's educational, it's unifying. Boy, do we need some unifying right now. Although, you know, we're in a process of disintegration, which is needed as well. So maybe I shouldn't be too hasty with that. But let's keep it in mind. Let's keep it in mind. Yeah.
I think it's all coming in. It's all happening at once, really.
Yeah, maybe.
And I think dealing with the communication for me and how liberating it has been to actually hear. Like, we're not taught to listen properly, and to actually allow that flow of energy that is happening between us right now, because we're both fully present, we're both able to hear one another. And I'm just so grateful for that, because that has really freed me up. And that's what you've explored with your groups of listening circles. And that's what I've explored doing my work with women, and opening up a space where we hear one another and we don't come in with our judgments, and we don't try to fix someone else. We literally just let them say what they're feeling, and honoring that, because people know, you know, we all have the power in ourselves, and we all have the tools to actually, you know, get to a place where we can realize things ourselves. But really being able to have that space is really what's needed, not for us to be arguing or head to head, or I need to be heard, you need to listen to me kind of thing. It's now safe spaces where we can hold one another and hear one another, so that we can really understand what's going on. I feel that's what's so amazing about communication and conversation, and having, you know, different people from different places and different perspectives sharing, because that is when we do see the wider picture and the greater picture. Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Deep breath.
Well, I'm very grateful that you catalyzed this conversation, that you provoked it. Thank
Well,
you.
you've been setting it up.
It's always a pleasure.
It is always leave feeling, you know, freer in myself.
And if we're doing another one, sorry, I jumped all over you then. I said if we're doing another one, I will try and listen a bit more than I speak. Yeah, but there was a lot in there. You've got the kind of lockdown rant. You know, I've had a few weeks of not seeing many people, so you got a lot. There was a lot in there wanting to come out. So yeah,
that's important as well, to hold space for that. And yeah, this has been a great beginning, because this is something we've done a lot of, you know, in our relationship, and just talking and talking and talking. And you helped me to see that there was another way to do that, because before I didn't even know what proper communication was. There's been so much healing through our conversation, and holding space for one another, and not judging, and not bringing in our own shit and throwing up over each other. There's been so much learning in that.
Well, there's maybe been a little bit of that too, but we were gracious enough to allow it, I think. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful healing experience.
It's all welcome, isn't it? Whatever it is, as long as it's kind of really witnessed properly and you can see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay.
Well,
I look forward to the next one.
Yeah. We're getting ready.
Mm-hmm. Feel that energy.
Yeah. This is the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You've stepped into it now, and the feeling is groovy. I feel there's more to it.
Yeah, I feel it too.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon.